Today on Locked On Rockies, a classic case of why you can't miss on those early opportunities.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 22nd day of July in the year 2025. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we are doing on your favorite Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. We are here free and streaming every day there, firing off your Rockies hot takes, letting you know what's on my mind when it comes to the Rockies. So thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Find us on those streaming services, and like we said, find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about how the early missed opportunities were kind of the signal. The big main problem that we faced with the Rockies was on full display here. And I want to talk about maybe the Rockies getting a little bit more creative with Austin Gomber and possibly what might be looking into the future for Austin Gomber. And an interesting note from before the game from Warren Schaefer when it comes to the pitching rotation, and a little bit of an observation I had about the Rockies lineup here and where they went with it. So and kind of some of the stuff that we've been seeing here throughout the season, and kind of as the season has changed a little bit, it's not some interesting things there. We'll talk about all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you again so much for making us your first listen of the day. And the big main takeaway I have from this loss with the Rockies was, again, this was a Cardinals team playing better baseball with some good hitters on there that unfortunately were able to start hitting the Rockies, especially later on as the ball game started going. And the main thing of why this game could have been completely different. It could have been completely flipped on its head if the Rockies were able to cash in on their opportunities when they're starting the game with the first three innings, getting the leadoff batter, a leadoff single to get things going. And the broadcast kind of mentioned this a few times there. The Cardinals starter there. While you look at his end line there with McGreevy there, you think that this is different. But the broadcast was kind of talking about how he was laboring a bit and was kind of feeling of maybe the effects of the altitude, maybe feeling the effects of the weather. And the Rockies, starting to put that early threat on there was setting up the exact type of recipe you're looking for at Coors Field, putting the pressure on immediately. And especially if you can get your opponent to be dipping into that bullpen in the first game of the series, you're going to be setting yourself up for a little bit better action there in the back half of the series. We know how bad the Rockies have been this year in series opener, and the series against the Twins is kind of one that maybe changed our thought process a little bit there as we were riding the wave of the first winning series. But that's one of the huge issues there. And again, I'm not against the Rockies being aggressive on the base paths there, but it's just so classic Rockies to have runners on first and third and then run themselves into two outs. I mean, it's going on contact. It's a tough play there, I guess, with Ryan McMahon when you're making that read and saying, we're going to immediately go for this. We're going to immediately, you're running right as soon as the ball is hit. You're going to hit an aggressive run for it and try to go after it. So it's a kind of a bummer, especially when you look at the fact that the Cardinals have not been great at running at cutting runners down, and Brenton Doyle hadn't been caught stealing, at least according to the broadcast here, throughout the entirety of the season. So this was the first time that we saw that the Rockies, arguably the best Rockies base stealer, get cut down like that, especially when it was just a perfect throw, perfect execution there on the defensive side for the Cardinals. So I guess that's a little bit of a bummer. And then the Rockies are able to add on there by breaking through and getting the first run across in the third. But if you were able to even just bring in the one run, even just be successful, it doesn't even have to be the crooked numbers. You're looking at a situation where you could have 4 runs by the third inning there. You're looking at an elevated pitch count there for the Cardinals starter. You're looking at a lot of things that the Rockies would be sitting themselves and positioning themselves to be in the driver's seat for this game, especially as as games go along, Austin Gomber gets more. It statistically has been shown the third time through the lineup is the worst part of the lineup, or the worst time for Austin Gomber, which kind of opens up my thought process with Gomber is the Rockies, maybe that's what you should be planning for. You should really, because it was interesting. One of the things that was noted there was the Rockies not having Kyle Freeland start at Coors again, moving his start and having him start in Baltimore, as they were mentioning. And this was I saw, what was it? I think Guerrilla Sports was in, but talking about with reporters and stuff like that before the game, mentioning how if you have that second Coors Field appearance on a homestand, the numbers are all way up. So what are you going to start asking that question about Austin Gomber? Because Gomber, again, was looking solid, was in a great spot there. And then it comes to the fourth inning where the damage is done on the long balls there. And then it starts piling up there. Gomber is able to finish, go with 5 2/3, but it ends up being 5 earned runs. I think you got to start looking at this and start looking at Austin Gomber with maximizing his efficiencies, making it so that, okay, if you continue to see the fact that he falls off when it's the third time through the order, or when he starts going, 4+ innings, start maybe Gomber is a modified opener type of thing where he can get you the first 4 innings, get you the first 2 times through the lineup there. And sure, since he's the starter, you can maybe let it ride and press your luck a little bit. But if you want to really maximize it, it certainly seems like there is something that just unlocks against against the opposition there, or the opposition unlocks something against Gomber, and they're able to start doing the damage. Again, this is a 6-2 ball game, and 5 of the 6 runs are all attributed to Austin Gomber here. The 6 strikeouts were great. I mean, the Rockies in general did a great job in striking out batters in this ball game, but giving up too many hits in the meantime. You strike out 11 here for Rockies pitching, which is a great appearance there, only allowing the 1 home run. But you give up the 15 hits there, and then they're bound to score. They're going to start landing. It's Coors Field. When you're putting the ball in play that much, and when you're getting on base, driving in those putting runners in scoring position, you're going to start driving them in there, especially when you're going up against a batter or a pitcher in Austin Gomber that is going to put, it's going to be ball in contact, ball in play, getting it out, getting things out there, getting outs via the fly ball. Of course, again, the curveball and the strikeout is a part of the tool belt, but 11 hits, 5 earned runs. You just have to start wondering a little bit. Is it time to get creative with Gomber? Is it time to start looking at Austin Gomber in a different situation with him, maybe out of a bullpen situation here? Because it's a weird line to be in as a starter, as starters are already not going as far as they used to in ball games. And now you have Austin Gomber where things just skyrocket as he gets deeper in ball games. Because it's that's what the frustrating element and the frustrating part about watching Austin Gomber is the 2 sides to each game, where it's just like, man, look at that. And then boom, it's the bad inning where everything comes apart, where everyone's locked in, where everyone's just doing the damage and fighting back there. And granted, that wasn't the case here, where it was the 2 runs scored in the third, bounces back for some some scoreless frames there. I'm sorry, actually, the Rockies were the ones that scored 2 in the third, but it was the 2 in the fourth answered right there. And then the Cardinals took over the game there. McGreevy was able to get back in a rhythm there and prevent the runners, not by striking out a lot of guys, but just not get by the Rockies offense as a whole, just kind of failing to be able to get the big and the important hits. Again, they were jumping on him early. They were being aggressive. They were setting themselves up, but the pitcher made the adjustment in the game and started hitting their pitches, whereas the Rockies were not able to adjust and go with them, and they were silenced throughout that early run. Goes back to how important it is to maximize when you have those chances. As the Rockies continue to struggle with runners in scoring position and struggle with scoring runs, this is a prime example game of this was a winnable game for the Rockies. This was a game in which they could have set the tone for the series here, gotten to the Cardinals bullpen a little bit earlier, made things more challenging, more difficult. But instead, the same kind of trends, the same type of stuff that deals with the Rockies or impacts the Rockies was on display here. And that's what makes it annoying. So I guess it's not going to be one thing, but I'm curious what you all think in there. Do you think that the Rockies should start taking a more creative approach and limiting not so much maybe the innings, but times through the order, instead of it going in there and saying, okay, we're going to pull you for sure at the end of the fourth every time? That's the goal. Maybe it should start being, okay, we start getting things going when there's three batters left in the lineup, and we start getting things up, or up and moving in the bullpen to be ready to relieve, but give Gomber the opportunity to kind of stifle those and make it, prove that he can keep going the distance as a starter, because he's got legit stuff that keeps hitters off balance. When he gets those first 3 innings, he was cruising in those first 2 innings there, and then for it to just rapidly deteriorate like it does, it's just a frustrating thing. So I do wonder if that might be something that the Rockies start to entertain. It's not so easy to just make that happen, right? To just be like, hey, we're going to go from a traditional starter thing where we want you to go certain, we're expecting this type of length, these type of innings, this type of stuff. But it's also like, this is now the time to be experimenting with stuff, right? If you're going to experiment with the Kyle Freeland moving of his start because you're looking at the numbers and diving into that, why wouldn't you take the same type of philosophy and the same type of approach for the Rockies when it comes to Austin Gomber there? So that's kind of some of my main takeaways there. But let's highlight, there was some good stuff there, and one of the things I think that's interesting about the lineup in this as well is that the Rockies are starting to putting their guys that they're trying to count on more in the big important positions, and the dropping of Brenton Doyle in the lineup I think continues to be something that will be a benefit to him. Let's talk about that and keep breaking down game 1 as the Rockies drop another one here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. Before we do that, though, folks, got to tell you about the fine folks that help make us these shows possible, and that includes FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. You know the Rockies are going to be plus money basically for the rest of the season, so why not make it a little more exciting? With FanDuel, you can get on the action in and all while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. They got those live in-game stuff as well. Maybe you got a hunch, maybe you got a feeling you like the trends that you're seeing in the game. Well, why not try your action at some of the live games as well? Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Back at it here for segment number 2 of today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you again so much for making us your first listen. Remember, you can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. You can also find plenty of great stuff on Locked On MLB as well. Couple of other notes there. I'm liking what I'm seeing when, we were talking about the return of Ezequiel Tovar here. I think with the return of Ezequiel Tovar, and while he was held hitless in this game, when you have Tovar back in the lineup, it does allow you to do stuff like drop Ryan McMahon out of the 4 hole and kind of allow him to be in a spot where still can do damage, still be driving in runs, but letting your guys, I think by allowing Goodman and Beck to be your 3 and 4 here, not only does it, give you a better chance when you're talking about the guys that have performed this year, but this is the type of stuff and the type of moments where you should start building that expectation, start setting the standard that, listen, guys, we know that you're having success this season, even though we as a team overall are not having a successful season. We are now putting you in these positions where it's time to start counting on you. Hunter Goodman, you're the all-star. You're the 3 hole, right? You're here. You're a 3 or 4. Really interesting graphic there. And I don't think this is too surprising to folks that have been following the Rockies of just how much of a difference it makes for Hunter Goodman offensively when he is when he's catching versus DHing. Every offensive category improvement when he's catching, and the big change is like I think 14 more home runs compared to when he's a DH. Now, obviously, he's caught more than he's DH there, but we've heard about that with Goodman, how much more comfortable he is on the field when he's behind the dish there. So, going to be something to continue to monitor there throughout the rest of the season. How much the Rockies use him as the catcher and how much they use him as the DH, especially as they're going to navigate too, wear and tear as they go through it. as the Rockies have not hesitated to put Austin Nola behind the dish there after bringing him up to the major leagues there. So I think that this is a nice sign, and I think this is a way to reward these guys while also kind of putting the pressure on them to be able to recreate, be able to do what they need to do on offense to be the contributors and be the key pieces there. Mind you, do we think that these guys are going to be the 3-4 big power stuff of the future? I have my hesitations. I think that they can, kind of in a similar boat to Ezekiel Tovar, where I think they got good, promising offensive stuff, and Hunter Goodman certainly can be in the middle of the order type of guy when we're looking at some of his power and some of his numbers. But I think, again, these guys are going to be better suited for if the Rockies are able to make splashes in free agency when they're building around these guys. These guys are going to continue to maybe grow and develop into even better offensive players. And then, and even with some of the issues that might get in the way, that's when you're hopefully able to build around them and be the key pieces there. It's, again, when we were talking to Rockies versus Connor, it was about how much, how much can you lean on Tovar being the guy, where a lot of these guys, if they were your 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th guy, and I don't want to say that their skills mean that they should be at the bottom of the order, but when your lineup has that the depth of that quality of bats, that's how you're in a good spot, especially when you're able to pair with your Goodmans and your Becks and your Tovars, guys that can consistently and constantly hit for power and drive in runs and be able to take advantage of these guys being able to get on base. And I think, again, when you're looking for a good sign here as well, Mickey Moniak gets another opportunity here and gets an opportunity to lead off for the Rockies, and he goes in and he gets 2 hits, including being a part of one of the 2 Rockies runs there. So that's a great sign, again, as Mickey Moniak continues to, I think, start making his way and start taking advantage of his consistent playing time here. We have to continue to start seeing these guys get in there. And I know why Orlando Arcia is in the lineup here, because one thing I was going to come in here and say, are we going to run the retreads of, oh man, we've seen enough with the Arcias, the farmers and stuff getting at bats. But with the Michael Toglia situation, and Schaefer also was speaking to reporters talking about not being a physical thing, but a mental thing, you have to be able to make that adjustment. And when you're looking at this Rockies roster right here, and it only consists of Arcia and McMahon as the main veterans here, the guys that have, the most experience, it is a good thing. It is a good sign here. Even though it didn't pan out here, the Rockies with this lineup are able to get 8 hits, including Moniak with 2 hits, Brenton Doyle with 2 hits, Amador with 2 hits. Guys that we need to see start getting some hits going, we're able to do that in this one. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to lead into runs, but they need to continue to get these guys at bats. If Amador is going to be up here as he's replacing Ritter and as they're filling in for Estrada, he's got to be getting the at-bats there. So it's good to see him on the field. But on the flip side is here, there needs to be some sort of, a little bit of the pressure on stuff for Toglia to start. I think he needs to feel the heat of that a little bit. He needs to start being able to, maybe the couple of days off, we'll hit the reset button and the Rockies can kind of go through, because Orlando Arcia is not really providing you much of anything when it comes to offense there. And it's just kind of putting a veteran presence in the lineup there and on the field as one of your bench guys. That's kind of the one exception where I'm sitting there, like, as much as I would like to just continue to be throwing Toglia out there, you can't just keep throwing him out there time and time again for him to continue to be striking out at a near 40% rate. And so there needs to be some sort of a reset and an adjustment period here. But again, as much as and that's what I think stinks about this game and what makes it a little bit more frustrating about the way it started, when you're talking about, man, look at this, Mickey Moniak starting things off. Oh, if Tovar was able to come up big, or Goodman, these guys can start showing that ability to drive these guys in. And you're like, okay, we'll start it over again in the second inning, and you get that leadoff guy going on there, and then it's, oh my goodness, then it's the running into the 2 outs there. It was just frustrating, because it was a sign that it was like, hey, the momentum from this Twins series could still be growing with these young guys leading the charge here. Moniak setting the tone immediately. Goodman able to get feeling confident about him there. But unfortunately, it was just one that they just could not cash in. They could not unlock the clutch factor, and that's been the situation and the story time and time again for the Colorado Rockies in 2025. It could be just such a different. I mean, it would be a completely different ball game, even just plating those one runs, like one run in both of those first two innings, like we talked about in segment number 1 there, immediately putting the pressure, immediately changing the approach and the dynamic for the rest of the series if you're able to get into the Cardinals bullpen. Instead, Cardinals are able to rebound there, and they're able to get McGreevy going up into the 7th inning there and only using two innings worth of work out of their bullpen, as it was quick for them. The Rockies were striking out big time there. In the last 6 outs of the ball game for the Rockies, they had only struck out once, and then in the final 6 outs of the ball game, they strike out 4 out of the 5 times that they had struck out in the entire game. So again, the Rockies were still in it. I mean, 4 runs is kind of on the higher side. It's definitely a higher watermark, certainly. But this was a game that was in reach for the Rockies throughout the majority of it, and a lot of missed opportunities early on there, as you just kind of ran into, I think, a team that showed you what happens. The difference there with veteran lineup, young lineup too, is when you're looking at it, because there's some numbers on the Cardinals offensive side that aren't that impressive, but guys were able to do damage, especially when you're looking at the bottom of the order here. When you're looking at the last 3 batters in the Cardinals order here, all batting under 250 here. OBP and slugging's kind of low on the low end as well. Those Walker, Pages, and Scott the second, all picking up at least 1 hit. Walker getting 2 of them, all of them picking up. Scott the second didn't have an RBI, but RBIs there from the bottom 3, 2 out of the bottom 3 in there, and of course Contreras having the big day as well on offense. So, you're not out of the woods. It's not over. You still have a chance to win your second home series of the year. It's going to have to come on back-to-back wins now, and you're going to have to put 2 good ball games together. And that's often been a rarity for the Rockies this year. But maybe if the good mojo of the Twin series carries over, you're going to feel a little bit better. But we'll see. And we'll take a look at the Rockies pitching matchup and look ahead to the game tomorrow and kind of see if there's any trends like we've been looking at with some of these pitchers here, coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? No, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the number one personal business phone. OpenPhone is the number one business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. That's how you can do it. You take your business line with that personal line there, so you got it all in one place, because that's what the beauty of OpenPhone is. It streamlines, it keeps it simple, so you're not going to miss out on potential clients. You don't have to juggle the 2 phones. You don't have to keep business and personal calls separately. OpenPhone can solve that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more who's handling this. And the AI agent handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so you never miss a customer again. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Rockies listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Locked On Rockies here, back with you for segment number 3, bringing this episode of Locked On Rockies to a close. Just letting you know, we'll be recapping the series and breaking things down, looking ahead to the trade deadline here, as the Cardinals picking up a win, making, again, their trade deadline situation a lot more interesting. I've brought this up on a lot of the pods lately, but I think it's very fascinating to be finding yourself, the Rockies playing certain teams here and kind of being a big factor in how and what they're going to do towards the trade deadline. We were talking about the Twins there, currently trailing against the Dodgers as of recording this episode. The Cardinals now 52-49. Is this going to shift any things here? And then, of course, we said Baltimore and Cleveland leading into the deadline. Just really interesting teams with like what type of moves can these teams make? What type of splashes? If the Guardians or the Cardinals are going to be buyers, how much will the Twins and the Orioles sell? Will these other teams sell as well? Is Nolan Arenado playing his last few games in a Cardinal uniform? Is this the last time we'll see Nolan Arenado as competing against the Rockies as a Cardinal as a result of that big trade? There's just some interesting storylines going leading up into the trade deadline. So making sure if you're curious about some other teams and everything, just keep it locked on to the Locked On Podcast Network. We got you covered there with all your teams because we're your team every day. Eric Fetty is taking on Bradley Blaylock in game number 2 here. And this is a situation here when you're looking at this line, when you're looking at this situation here, when you're looking at this starter for the Cardinals here, this is one where you're sitting there saying, okay, we need to be again, maybe I would like to see the Rockies be a little bit less aggressive and kind of get their things. But man, when they're jumping on pitches, getting singles, setting that tone early, this is a pitcher that you're going to need to be, you're going to be able to have success with if you're looking at some of the numbers like we talked about before. We kind of is similar there to the opener there in the first game of the Twins series here. Fetty has 3-9, the 4.83 ERA, a whip of 1.47 in 98 innings pitched. He's allowed 99 hits in that time, struck out 58, but walked 46 in that time and allowed 12 homers there. So again, be patient. Don't let him beat you with this stuff where the strikeouts are going to be overpowering. It's not like he's going to be some of these guys that can come in and absolutely dominate you with the strikeouts. Be patient. Make sure you work the zone, especially when you're kind of seeing how the umpires have been calling the zones the past couple of days. They're a little wonky. This is one where you're sitting there and you're saying, yeah, this is a pitcher here that on paper shouldn't be a massive problem for this Rockies lineup. He's a right-hander. This is going to be this is again when we were talking about in segment number 2 where we're looking for guys like in the middle of the order, the Becks and the Goodmans as they're looking to kind of solidify their first halves and kind of solidify their roles and their responsibilities and where they're at within the Rockies roster. This is a matchup you got to be hungry for. This is a matchup you're looking at again where, hey, you get this one, you got a chance to get the series, back-to-back series wins. You got a chance to be set in this as the most successful road trip or homestand of the season for the Rockies here before going on a road trip against two teams in, like we said, interesting positions and not sitting there kind of a dreaded California road trip or something like that, as the Rockies will see at different points in this the second half here. This is the chance here. And it's, again, another opportunity when you're talking about Blaylock here. This is an opportunity for him to get after it and start correcting some of his things here, because he's allowed 33 hits in 21 innings pitched here with a whip of 1.80, only 9 strikeouts in that time, 6 walks and 6 home runs. So we saw the pitching is going to matter. If the Cardinals were showed in this one, when you're giving them opportunities, to hit the ball, it might not be the home run or the big launch there, even though we did see one from the Cardinals there. They'll do it by hitting singles. They'll try stealing bases. They are a smart, well-run team there. They're going to try to be just as aggressive and be able to take advantage of the fact of a guy that has not had the most success in a very small segment of time. Again, this is it's not like Blaylock's been pitching in the big leagues for a ton of time. This is a situation in which you got to be able to turn to your offense, especially if it starts to turn into a classic Coors Field game, or if you find yourself trailing. The Rockies were successful against the Twins and coming back in games here. So again, if Blaylock isn't hitting his stuff as well as you're hoping, if you find yourself down a couple of runs, you just got to Blaylock's just got to do enough to keep the Rockies in there and hopefully turn to a bullpen that can be one of the strength, or be as solid as we've seen it at times this year. But this is a game where you are looking at the offense for the Rockies here. This is not a game where we can see, if you only struck out 5 times in the first in the first game here, you got to carry that batter's eye over here and do the damage against Eric here, and start doing these against the guy that again, statistically so far this year has not been that great. This is a prime make them uncomfortable in Coors situation. If you can get to the bullpen in this game too, it's a day game on Wednesday. You're setting yourself up in a good spot there. This is a gotta Gotta do damage, gotta perform, gotta be impact on from the offense here. This is where you're looking for another Ryan McMahon home run and him to stay hot by hitting the ball in the gap. You're looking for Brenton Doyle to keep adding on a couple of base hits here. And you're looking, of course, for Moniak and Goodman, Tovar and Beck to be the top half and be a strong and set that tone for the Rockies. You cannot afford to go through a similar game here in game 2 and miss out on early opportunities. If you're able to get on quickly like you did in game 1, you got to cash in. You got to make the adjustments, and you got to do the little things right. You got to be successful stealing the bases. You got to make sure you're playing heads up and looking heads up there on the when the ball's in play. You just got to do all those little things, and that you're on paper going into this game with a good chance. So we'll see if the Rockies, the new look top of the order for the Rockies, can do it in game number 2. And we'll be breaking it all down right here on Locked On Rockies. Locked On Rockies, Locked On Cardinals crossover coming your way for recapping the series. But, folks, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB and Locked On MLB Game Night. And, of course, if you need more Colorado sports coverage, we got you covered. Locked On Broncos, Avalanche, Nuggets, and Buffs, all free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.